Hey everybody, it's Abishur Prakash, aka Mr. Geopolitics. The Israel-Iran war is escalating rapidly. What began as Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites has now expanded to all-day attacks by both Israel and Iran on each other. The entire world is holding its breath. What will happen? Where will this go? And within this context, many nations are wondering what the US role will be. Until recently, the US was pursuing the diplomatic track with the Iranians, attempting to dismantle the Iranian nuclear program through diplomatic means. This, of course, reached a brick wall, largely over uranium enrichment. The US wanted zero uranium enrichment. Iran said this was not a topic of conversation. This was off the table. Then Israel struck, and the rest is history. Now the US is on the precipice of entering the war. This was predictable. The Trump administration has said that it's exploring. The US President Donald Trump has said he may or may not give the green light. Only he knows what will happen next. Certain reports say that Trump has approved the attack plans on Iran, but is waiting to give the green light. Other reports suggest that the US has given a 2-week window to enter the war, meaning that President Trump is waiting to see, even in this last hour, whether there is a diplomatic off-ramp. All of this was predictable. The US was not going to stand by while Israel takes on Iran, not just because Israel is one of America's closest allies, but also because in order to fully take out the Iranian nuclear program, at least according to Western estimates, the US needs to get involved with its bunker busting bombs. Now comes the unpredictable, which is what America knows, that once it enters the war, anything could happen. All bets will be off that this war is coming to an end, that diplomacy can prevail. Once the US enters the Israel-Iran conflict, the true powder keg threatens to explode. And this creates many possibilities, a lot of unpredictability of what happens next. The biggest unpredictable aspect, is with the Strait of Hormuz, the critical trade lane where over 25% of the world's oil passes through every single day. 70% of this oil is for Asian markets like Japan, India, and China. On top of this, other Arab states that export oil, like Saudi Arabia, almost 75% of Saudi Arabia's seaborne oil exports go through the Strait of Hormuz. They're loaded at a port on the Persian Gulf and flow through the Strait of Hormuz into global markets. If Iran shutters the Strait of Hormuz through naval blockade or plants mines that deter ships from traveling the Strait of Hormuz, global energy prices skyrocket. It could reach $100 a barrel. Some speculate it could reach $200, $300 a barrel. The moment this happens, the US, like every other economy, will be in a very dangerous situation. Inflation will rise, and Trump's own goals of lowering costs, of lowering the price of energy, of reducing the economic strain on American consumers will be up in the air. So now there's a direct correlation between the war in the Middle East and Trump's own domestic commitments to the American constituents, to his constituents back in the US. They are now connected, and they are now deeply reliant on what Trump does next regarding the Middle East, which as of right now is very unpredictable. Then comes who else will get involved. This is a big gray area as far as whether other Arab states will be drawn into the war, whether Iran will target Arab states that it feels is sheltering Israel, defending Israel. If the US enters the war, US bases are on Iran's target list. But what about Arab capitals, Arab states like Jordan that are helping intercept missiles destined for Israel? Who enters the war next? It is also a question of who enters the war through non-conventional means. Over the last week, for 3 days, Chinese cargo planes entered Iran. 3 specific planes over 3 different days entered Iran carrying a mysterious load. This came just weeks after Iran had purchased materials from China to build around 800 ballistic missiles. So China is providing some level of support. If the US enters this war and there are no guardrails, will China provide even more support to Iran? Then there's the question of the split taking place within the US conservative movement. There's already huge division, huge rifts. There's internal fighting between groups within the MAGA camp who believe Trump should intervene and strike Iran, and groups within the MAGA camp who believe that Trump needs to pursue his initial promises from his first term and his second term not to get the U.S. entangled in foreign wars. If the U.S. enters this conflict, this rift threatens to grow in serious ways. And this once again creates a correlation between the Israel-Iran war and the U.S. role in it and the U.S. society and political situation. If the conservative movement begins to split into different groups, some aligned with Trump, some not, it adds even more nuance and more complexity as to the future of American unity, as to the future of American political polarization, and how Republicans plan to keep command of the White House and Congress next year, as well as in the next presidential elections in 2028. And lastly, and perhaps the most unpredictable, is how the U.S. plans to limit escalation. Once the U.S. gets involved and begins striking Iran, once Iran retaliates, potentially striking U.S. bases, once further action takes place, like Iran using its around 5,000 to 6,000 mines and planting them in the Strait of Hormuz, once these moves are taken, there is no saying or stopping where things go next. There's no stopping the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites in conjunction with Israel from snowballing into U.S. strikes that target the Iranian Ayatollah. There's no saying that new U.S. intelligence may find further nuclear sites in eastern Iran, far from where the fighting is currently, further entangling the U.S. and Israel in this campaign. So there's no saying how far this could escalate, what the Iranians will do, considering they're now going to be locked in an asymmetrical battle, meaning that they may use very dangerous means like hiring gangs, as they've been doing in Nordic states, to carry out hits. They may turn to the most dangerous and unconventional means of war to strike back at the U.S. and Israel. And at those moments, ideas of off-ramp, ideas of diplomacy, ideas of narrow engagement all go out the window. I hope you resonated with this episode of Predictable versus Unpredictable. Leave your comments below and talk soon.